everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm thrilled you can join us today. And I don't know if you're aware, but June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. So join in on passing the information around that you find regarding dementia. It'll help a lot of people. Now, before we get started today, I always like to do a couple of shout outs. So I always encourage people to go to alzheimersspeaks.com, check out all of our free educational resources. There you'll be able to access our global resource directory, Dementia Map as well. And you can find out about our book, Betty the Bald Chicken, along with so many other projects and programs that we do. And I want to give a big shout out to Twiddle. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but if not, you should be. Twiddle has some great sensory tools that really help people when they are dealing with sundowning or just a little fidgety or have some anxiety going on. They also have a product called Adapt or Wrap, which really eases the dressing process and gives them a lot of comfort and makes things just a little bit easier for everybody. So today we are going to be talking with Innerhive, and we are going to be learning about their business and how that can help you when you're caring for a friend, a loved one, or even a client. Well, Crystal, I'm so excited to have you on the show. We've been talking for a while, and you have been working really hard in the background with your company, just pulling all these pieces together to support, care partners. And I think my audience is going to be really excited to learn about the work that you're doing. So before we get started, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit about yourself and, what your background is and how the heck you got into this caring space, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I've been in kind of the technology world, leading product and engineering teams for about 15 years. Before this, I can't say that I had ever imagined myself moving and pairing wellness with technology. While I have a passion for it, I've lived in other industries, and this kind of came about based on a personal experience that was close to heart. And, sometimes you go through things, and I think some of the most creative and the best solutions were born from your personal challenges or you kind of sitting with that pain. And I'd say that's certainly true of Innerhive. There are a lot of personal experiences around caregiving for myself and even for others on the team that really brought this to fruition. So that was kind of the pivot.
Well, and I think one of the most important pieces that you mentioned was that personal experience. You get it. You've been there. You've done it. There's a big difference between being told what the problem is and feeling the pain of the problem personally.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How you attack things. Yeah. So, thanks for sharing that. Now, can you tell us if you've been personally touched by dementia or, in your own family or circle of friends?
I have, so after finding myself kind of retreating to my closet for my place of respite and feeling a little bit like a puddle, this was after bringing in family to live with us. I just realized that we needed to make a change. And so that's why Innerhive was born. But mostly what had happened was a few years ago, we had moved my grandmother and my uncle across country to live with us. One had late stage cancer, the other had dementia. For me, it felt very easy. I had the privilege of spending early life in a multi-generational home. So I had my grandparents there with me. And so to make the decision and to say, yes, let's move them out, you don't even think twice. It feels like it's a privilege to have, your grandmother and your uncle living with you during the final years. You got to start there. And so to finish there is kind of a joy. But what we didn't realize after moving them in and across country, we just grossly underestimated what it takes to care for someone. The degree of change, with different conditions, what that looks like to coordinate. There's so many different stages, specifically with cancer and with dementia, but with dementia that require a lot of education, a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, you're changing your lifestyle, you're changing your communication style, how you connect with others. And that was really evident for us. So it was something that I think you could read about and you can talk to others, but until you're in it and you feel it, you just don't feel prepared. I mean, it's so different for everyone. And that was just a really, really difficult emotional journey. Caregiving is probably the greatest gift of love, but it's also super exhausting. And I don't feel like enough people are talking about the demands and, what can you do to help those that are struggling with dementia, and how do you show up, and, what are some of the more creative or holistic approaches to kind of caring and ensuring they've got a good quality life and maintain some degree of independence as you're, working through that care journey.
Well, I cared for my dad who had brain cancer, my mom with dementia. And one of the things, when you were talking that just like slapped me in the face was the difference in the treatment. Cancer has a treatment. They are specific. They know exactly kind of what it is and, how they're going to attack it. And it gives you as a family member, and I think the patients, some confidence that they've been there, done this before, and they really understand what it's going to be. And even telling you, what some of the symptoms might be that, you might not like, but it's going to get you to this point. Where with dementia, you kind of get that diagnosis and you get an appointment, you might get a pill, and then you're kind of pushed out the door, told to get your affairs in order. And it's like, well, where's the plan?
Yeah.
What do we expect? With a lot of times it's not even defined what that means to family members. So there's such a huge, huge contrast. And yet there's such overlap in caring skills in some levels as well too. So thank you for sharing your story with us there. Now, do you feel like the world is kind of in crisis, in a caregiver crisis, or care companion, care partner, carer, depending on where you're living in the world? Don't want to offend anybody. Everybody terms it a little bit different, but when you're caring for someone, do you feel like we're kind of in that crisis mode? Or I know some people have said it's an epidemic.
Yeah. If you had asked me 3 years ago, I would have had a different answer. I think, again, living through it, you buy a red car and then all of a sudden you're driving down the street and all you see are red cars. So maybe there's a little bias here, but I think the crisis is real. You look at the trajectory, especially post 2020, and you think about how things have shifted, and you think about just the general statistics of how many people, 1 in 5, are family caregivers. That's unpaid. And 60% of us are trying to juggle life and work. And let's not even get into the sandwich generation that's trying to care for their own family, plus, manage care for those that are aging. And yeah, we have an issue. We have a very, very big issue, and it's just projected to grow. And if we don't do something about it, and if we can't think about it from a systemic perspective, I just don't, it's a cycle. And there's, the burnout cycle is real too. And there's no good caregiving effort that can be done if the caregivers are burning out and they're creating a health issue for themselves. They're just jumping right in that wheel. And that's just, we're not set up for success right now in our society, in my opinion. So yes, the crisis is real.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that we define it wrong. Typically that 1 in 5 people are looking at the primary caregiver, but there's a whole family. I used to get really upset with the, I want to say it was the Alzheimer's Association. Don't quote me on this, but years ago, they used to say a person diagnosed affects 7 other people. And I'm like, well, you have an awful small family and no circle of friends then, and then you add in the community at large. So, so I think that's one of our problems is we don't understand the ripple effect. And I'm a believer in, I want to get your opinion on this, because I think if we change the definition and how we look at it and what it's called, I think could help greatly. But I look at that we are all caregivers from the moment we're conceived. And people will go, well, how can a baby in a womb give care? And to that I say, how many conversations have changed, because someone's pregnant? Everything changes, and people are talking, they're playing music to the baby brings comfort to people. I mean, there's all kinds of things like, touch it, oh, it's moving. All of those things are happening And that's all part of care. So I think, to me, part of it is we have to redefine it and get it to be a normal thing that we all are part of. If we want to be or not, we get to choose who we care for or how we care, but we all give care. No one's just walking around thinking, I don't impact anyone else. Well, there's a few of those out there, but we all impact other people and they impact us. And so to me, I think that that's just a huge piece that needs to change, because then maybe it would take some of the scary out of people addressing what it's really all about and looking at it different. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know there's that famous quote that Rosalind Carter said around, we've been a caregiver or we're currently caregiving or we're going to be, whatever that quote looks like. I'm not always good at summarizing those. But yeah, I mean, I know for me, and I also think caregiving, some of the challenge, I've lived in technology, I've grown up in technology. While I love it and there's certain pros to it, there's a lot of drawback to it. And I feel like the society that we're in has continued to go on this trajectory where we've almost lost the value in community. And when I think about caregiving, at the core of what you just said, it's a community. I mean, to do anything, to raise a family, to think about caring for someone, it's more than you to run a business. It's always the people that you're surrounded by. It is your community. And I don't think we're going to be able to address this crisis unless we can look at it from that lens and think about it as a communal thing. And yeah, absolutely. I saw recently, so many different places are being a little bit more proactive about thinking of how can we, care for those that are aging? How can we care for families that are managing and caring for children with medical complexities? Like, what programs exist intertwined to share that knowledge, to build community? And I saw there's one state in particular that's really starting to blend early education and kind of childcare with elderly, and they're mixing them, and the joy and the learning and the simple nuances that come from connecting and body language and just the connection, the touch there. I mean, that's what it should be about. It shouldn't be about these isolated homes or living environments that are creating more of a problem and more burden, and they're leading to this feeling of depression and being alone. Like, we should be spending this time and these days together. So yeah, I'm with you. I absolutely think we're all caregivers at some point. Even if you can care for your plant, it doesn't matter what you're caring for. You are still extending and exerting energy and giving something and creating something. And that's just the essence of it. So yeah, it's not scary. We're all going to be there. We're all aging too. Yeah. I mean, I'm not getting younger by the day. So I recognize the problem that I'm seeing and feeling and we're talking about right now. This is our future. And so if we don't take responsibility and do something about it, that's scary to me.
Yeah. Well, and I liked when you mentioned the plant, because the plant, yeah, it might be in crisis if it lives in my house anyways, because I'm not a good green thumb person, but it's not like this overwhelming thing that you have to do, taking care of a pet, a dog, sometimes, for many people, a child, those things, they're planned or they want them, they're pulling those things into their lives. But I think caregiving gets such a negative thing, because I think people feel like it was dumped on them. I have to take care of somebody because they can't take care of themselves anymore. And, I think of, gosh, look back at your life. Who raised you? Who cared for you growing up? I mean, there were many people, but we don't take that in stride anymore. So again, getting back to that whole sense of community, I think is really important. So Crystal, let me ask you this. What are some struggles that you see caregivers, dealing with on a daily basis?
Everything. I mean, the backlog of that list is large. There are different needs, there's different wellness preferences, but mostly when you're in the caregiving role, you're thinking about, what are the core things I need to do for the individual or those that I'm caring for? You get into this logistical mold, or at least for me, I did. You start to think about cleaning and feeding and safety and, everything that matters for them, but you absolutely forget to think about yourself. You almost kick into high drive and cortisol is running the show, and then you forget and you miss the signals, and before you know it, you're exhausted or burnt out or your own health has suffered. And so I think it's a really blurry line, trying to understand how to care for and be in that role and give everything. to also being a family member, to love them and to enjoy those meaningful moments, to then also remembering to care for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the other things you need to do, if it's work, if it's taking care of other family members or friends, and volunteering, and, your finances. I mean, the list just kind of doesn't end. I know for myself, I found, and I kind of laugh at it at times looking back, that it was like, I don't know if I felt like I had to be superwoman or something. I couldn't ask for help. I just kept taking more stuff on. So, I was married. I had my own business. I had a child. So I was a wife. I was a mother. I had extra people living in my house. I was caring for both my folks. I still did my volunteer work. And then I wondered why I was going crazy, and I just didn't have time for anything for me. I didn't. And when the journey was over, I didn't even know who I was anymore, because you get so entrenched. So when you were talking about all the things you have to do, I remember printing out every night the list of everything I had to do, because I couldn't keep track of it all in my mind. And I also found that power of a check, of accomplishing something, helped me in a weird way, that I didn't even know I was getting a benefit out of. Okay, I completed that. There's so many levels, and it depends on, is the day going smooth, or, do you have a rough patch and your person's not cooperating, or maybe the medications haven't come in and you've gone to the drugstore now twice to go pick them up and they're not there, and you didn't have time for those extra runs. I mean, it just doesn't end. And you never know really what's going to pop up on you. That was my experience anyways, with that. Can you tell us some of your personal experiences that you struggled with when caring for somebody?
Yeah, I'm a pretty pragmatic person, and so I tend to lead with logic. And I think for me, the most difficult experience of that was it tapped into my emotions, specifically just trying to feel like what you had said. You go through a day and you have all these demands and they're all piling up, and you're trying to bring calm and clarity, and you're trying to be productive and get through it. And inside, it just feels like you're withering and you're exhausted and you're trying to keep yourself in check. And you reach a point where you realize, I'm on empty. And then for me, I started to feel like, what could I be doing differently? What am I missing? Am I not doing enough? It hit really hard. It hit very differently than anything else that I'd gone through in life. And I think what you had said resonates with me. I was living on my phone and I was making notes. I was snapping pictures. I was trying to make connection of who did I talk to? When did I talk to them? I wanted to make sure that I had the qualitative data and the quantitative data. And oh my goodness, forget about making the calls. That was just a never-ending checklist of, this is who to call. Here's their number. Here's where you can, schedule the appointment. And then you're playing calendar Tetris, trying to make that work. And there were nights where it was like, oh my gosh, we barely made it through the day. I've given what I have available to my team. I've given what I have available to my family, to the kids or the dogs or your spouse. Unfortunately, for me, it was like, hi, it's great to see you, but I'm a pancake. What's the best thing we can make for dinner? Put everyone to bed and call it a day. And so I struggled. I found myself just trying to think, how am I going to get through tomorrow? And that's a lot for me because I feel like I have a pretty high threshold. And so when I was retreating to my closet and finding myself, in that state of overwhelm and not quite sure, what tomorrow would look like, nonetheless, a week from now, that was a pretty big signal to take a step back and figure out, what needs to change. How can I ask for help? There was 3 of us caring for 2 people. And so we were doing our best. We had to redesign the house. We had a schedule of, who was on, because dementia takes 24/7 care. You cannot leave someone alone. And so they want to be engaged with. You have to, there's tending to their needs in terms of, life stuff such as food, safety, exercise, that kind of thing. But there is also thinking about the coordination that we just talked about. Like you had said, just some people use paper, going to some of these appointments, they're like, I'll send this here, or I'll call you. Or I was like, can we all just use one thing? Can we talk through one thing? Can we get on the same page? Because I need to inform other family members and keep them current. And when it's so chaotic and disparate and I'm struggling to keep it, controlled and organized, forget about it. How am I going to share that story with others or bring them into the fold? It doesn't give me confidence and feeling like here's all the relevant information. So you have both the critical information for care, but also their preferences. And so absent of that, it becomes really hard to kind of share that caregiving weight.
Oh, that's such a good point, because I remember going through that, and then I would feel guilty if I didn't update the other family members, or team members. And then sometimes they would get a little snarky because they wouldn't understand, but they didn't have the whole story. And it's like, I'm summarizing things because I just don't have time to keep rewriting things, and they're not going to read this whole thing. So it was trying to figure out communication styles and, where things go. It was just a lot of work. And communicating with the doctors, I mean, that they don't tell you how to communicate with them. I mean, now they have online portals where it's gotten a little better, but I just noticed mine changed, and now it's like, well, now I can't really send a specific message to my doctor like I could for a while. Now it's kind of going into this holding tank, and Lord knows what's going to happen with it there. But yeah, that stuff is totally exhausting. And you had mentioned about burnout. I didn't even realize I was burnt out, because I've always been one that's been in control. I've been in control of my life, my emotions. People could always rely on me. I never wanted anyone to think that I couldn't handle something. So I would like belly up, and put on my smiley face. And then I would go down in the basement sometimes. And just after everybody left the house, I'd close the windows and I would scream. I would have to get it out. And I'm like, where did that come from? And it's like, well, look, you don't have to look back too far, Laura. You're doing too much. Plus you're exhausted so much out of all the things you're doing. You also mentioned about, caring. You've got those tasks, you've got the communication, but then you have the emotional need of caring too, for that quality of life piece. And I think sometimes people don't value that as much as they should, how important that is to the patient and to you to kind of give you that relationship piece back. So you're not just a taskmaster and they're not just a sick person. Because sometimes I found that's what it turned into. And that, to me, was very destructive, for all of us. The other thing that I found with caring, and I didn't know this for years, but I used to sell real estate. And so I had run into a client of mine who, we sat down and we're having a cocktail or something. And she's like, oh my gosh, you've got the most beautiful eyes. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And she's like, Lori, your eyes weren't like that when you sold us our other 3 homes. They were like pitch black. I had no idea I was that exhausted and that drained. The light really was being sucked out of me, even though I wanted to give, until years and years after that impact, because you don't take time, or I didn't take time to look at the clues right before me. And many people won't say anything to you because they don't want to hurt your feelings and they don't know how to help. So yeah, I do think this is a massive, massive issue, that we need to be able to provide smoother ways to deal with it. So it gives everybody comfort. And like you said, still is collecting the data, it's communicating, but you can breathe and still live your life, because it's very complicated. I wanted to just squeeze in a little break here. I want to tell everybody about Q-Blocks really quick. But before I do that, I just want to let people know, if you're just tuning in, that we have been talking with Crystal Gallo with Innerhive, and we're going to get more into what Innerhive offers all of us as caregivers, care companions, care partners, carers, and how it can make our lives easier and make us better carers. But right now we're going to hear about Q-Blocks, which is Q for the good, and they are webmasters that really specialize in dealing with socially conscious businesses. So we'll be right back. I also want to introduce you all to Q-Blocks. They have been absolutely excellent to deal with. They have been in business for 18 years and they serve the globe. I can't say enough good things about this company. I've had a lot of bad experiences. I don't know about you with tech companies. They have made a very complicated process very easy. And their staff is so kind, so polite, so respectful to work with. And when I am frustrated and ready to pull my hair out, they just smile and tell me everything's going to be okay. And they really are just on top of the communication, which alleviates so much stress as an owner when you're dealing with tech issues. You can get a 10% discount. Visit them at QBlocks, that's CUEBLOCKS.com, or you can email them at letstalk@qblocks.com. For that 10% discount, just put Lori, Lori, in the inquiry form. And again, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I surely haven't been. I can't rave enough about this company, and that's kind of rare these days. So we are back with Crystal, and this has just been a fascinating conversation because I think we're talking about stuff that people don't really feel comfortable talking about when it comes to caring for another person. And yet it is critical that we work as a community and we ease the process for everyone so that they can enjoy the journey instead of, being burnt out or feeling like it's a burden. So Crystal, I want to ask you in terms of, we've kind of highlighted some of the issues that caregivers have. What do you think is the best way to serve them? So we can ease that burden and get them back into feeling sane and in control and in relationships so that they don't lose themselves in this process.
Yeah. I think what you had just said, and we've talked about, it's been a common thread this entire time, is we miss the signals and maybe we don't know how to navigate the emotional struggle that we're going through. We don't know how to ask for help. But when you're surrounding yourself with a support system and you have the resources, you have the tools, but most of all, you have the community to recognize that, to know when to swoop in, to give you, a little nudge and say, take some time, to offer you comfort, to bring support, to provide, tips, or here's what worked for me. That's everything. And I really think if we can offer that, and, with Innerhive, if we think about where we're going and what we've learned from my experience in caregiving on the team and others and those that we've talked to, we've talked to hundreds of people that have sat, and just as you said, they've been a community around those that are care recipients. And if we can provide a lifeline to caregivers to let them know their wellness matters, and we want to provide them with everything they need to be able to do their caregiving role and to be effective as a caregiver, as a family member, and also to sustain their own wellness. And so, yeah, I just think community is everything. We need the tools, we need the resources, but most of all, we need the community. It's going to help reduce the mental load. It's going to be there to support people. When you can foster that too, it makes, as you had said, the communication, it makes the coordination easier. It alleviates the stress. When you've got people around you, you're not as isolated. You've got people walking the walk with you, and you can feel it. It's palpable. And so that support system is critical.
Yeah, I would agree. I hear that from my support groups that, this is a lifesaver for me. I hear that, both virtually and in person. And I know for myself, I fought going to a support group because I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have time to do another thing for another person. And that's how I viewed it. And my listeners have heard this story before, but I ended up going to a support group to hear a friend speak, and then he got sick and didn't show up, and I couldn't leave. So I was like stuck there. But it was like fabulous that I got stuck there because I saw and I felt the community, and I didn't know to expect that. I just thought it was another, okay, I'm going to learn about this, and I'm going to learn. And I didn't know there was this whole emotional side to it, that there was this safety to it, that there was this comfort, to being part of a community. That I didn't know that. So again, what I hear people say is it makes me not feel alone, because as you probably know, and maybe you're lucky and didn't know this, but so many people say family and friends walk away and don't understand the journey or don't want to hear about the journey. And so that's really isolating. And so when your own family and friends push you away, it's like, how can I talk to somebody else? You don't feel comfortable, or most of us don't feel comfortable approaching strangers on that, not realizing they're in the same boat, wanting the same thing, to talk to somebody who understands, who's not going to judge, but is going to be resourceful and yet knows they can't fix you, but they can support you. And everybody can kind of learn together. So tell us, more about Innerhive, the mission that you have and what you have to offer people.
Yeah, we really want Innerhive to kind of change the dialogue. So we knew that in order for a caregiver to have their wellness intact and be able to give to others, we needed to prioritize them just as much as the care recipient. And so Innerhive is a place where you can kind of see everyone that's in your support network. You can build empathy for what that complexity looks like. You can, maintain and organize the most critical documents, any sort of images, photos, files, contact information. The goal is get it in one central place, create a degree of order so that as you're thinking about aligning others and you're onboarding new support members or you're building empathy for what you're dealing with, you've got a picture, you've got the whole picture. So it's much easier to articulate. It's much faster to onboard. It brings a degree of confidence because you've got all the, qualitative information there of here's what's going on with the diagnoses. Here's what's going on with my wellness, their wellness. Here's what we both need. These are things that drive confidence. These make it easier to ask for help. It makes it easier to go out and feel supported. And so we wanted a place for that. And in there, we also want to provide, some degree of, as you had said, there's a lot of education and best practice that goes into this. And in the very beginning, oftentimes it's overwhelming. And so we want people to be able to come, see the network, connect with others that are on the same journey, but also be able to get access to resources that help guide them. What does this mean? What do I need to do? Where am I at on my journey? What are the additional things I need to think about to ensure that my care today and my, quality of life and care in the future is thought about? I want my preferences and my sanity, and I want all the tools to make my job easier in one spot. And so Innerhive is very much about, we're here to serve the caregivers. We know what they're doing for everyone out there that they're caring for, and we want to make sure that they're not forgotten about.
Oh, that's wonderful. When you were talking about the documents, and you were talking about the support and the education, I was thinking, the doctors are telling me to do this, and then other people are telling me to do that, and I'm feeling the need to do this, and I don't know how to prioritize. For me, I always went back to what the doctor said, first, because I felt I needed that the most. And yet with my dementia journey, there wasn't much they were giving me. They were, if they referred me out, they didn't really even know what they were referring me out to specifically. They had just kind of heard this might be helpful, but they didn't really know what I would find there. So it's interesting, I think, in terms of what type of situation that you're dealing with, in terms of what you'll find there. And then, with the documents, it sprung into my head. Not only is it what's going on a daily basis and trying to track, are we having reactions to different things, and is the medicine doing what it's supposed to, or are we having side effects? Are we seeing things progress? And if so, how? Because I know all that data is really critical. But it was also mom and dad's list of friends, their contacts, their birthdays, so I could help them stay connected. So it was this medical piece, but then there was this whole social community piece in there as well on many different levels. And to me, I needed both of those to find balance. And I was always worried too, like, gosh, if I get hit by a bus, no one else in the family is going to know what the heck's going on with all of this, because I had like little spiral notebooks. This one I'd take to the doctor, and this one, I was just taking notes, and then I would transfer them over, at another time. And it just gets complicated. And we have to think of that because, as a lot of times a caregiver will get sick themselves or pass on. And as much as we don't want to think about that, we have to realize we're not on this planet forever either. And so that transition, that responsibility, you need to, I think about, and you need to have other people knowing what is really going on. And so often I think when there's the communication breakdown or you don't have time to do it, people don't know the real story. You know, they'll come over and go, well, they look fine to me. Well, yeah, you were here for 2 hours. You know, you weren't here all day. You didn't see what happened as soon as you left. You know, things changed because people can rally when they're ill. You know, they want to put on a good front. And so all of those little things, I think really, really matter a lot to get the real story out in the real conversation. You had also mentioned about building empathy. Can you, because I don't think everybody knows what empathy is. Can you explain in your words what empathy is to you and what building empathy offers, you know, someone who's giving care?
Yeah, I mean, there's an understanding that comes with it, but there's a feeling too. So it's kind of the beautiful collision of I understand, I've heard, I've been educated. Oh, now I'm in it. I feel it, like it's sitting with me. You know, that mix of those two, people can see it from a distance and they can learn and they can go through or they can talk to people. But until to some degree you felt it yourself or you've been in the presence of those where you can witness what they're feeling and you can feel that, it's really difficult. Someone can say, my life is crazy and I'm just struggling. Please don't call me. If you haven't heard from me, I'm here. I'll get back to you next year. But I just have a lot that I'm going through. And to them, they don't get it. When you bring them into the fold, when they come and they spend a day, maybe a week with you, and you see the exhaustion translate to them, or you see them seeing and feeling everything you've been going through, they walk away and they go, oh, I get it now. Like I absolutely understand. And I thought I understood before, but I've lived it. I've walked with you. I felt it with you. And now, you know, I get it. And so sometimes showing the whole picture when you talk to people about, there's a lot of people involved in your wellness. And as you'd said, it's more than medical. Sure, as we age, medical generally takes the forefront because we generally go through changes. But when you think about the people that are supporting you in your family, you think about your household, your pets, you think about your community, your spiritual groups, your movement groups, you know, there's so much more to your wellness. And so I think that is something that people, they don't think, you know, they go into this very single-threaded logistical mode, and until they're in it and seeing it and feeling it and they're clicking through, or they're, you know, someone sends you something and you're like, no, it's really long, it's going to take me hours. I was like, well, just send it to me, it can't be that bad. And you open it, it's 100 pages, and that feeling you have of, I can't do this, and you close it, you get it now. Like you're there with them, and you go, okay, now I understand why that's difficult to process, it's a lot. And so seeing the whole picture is really important. I think visuals help cement concepts, help cement complexity. It helps people really understand what you have going on. And when someone can understand what you have going on and they build the empathy, I think they make themselves a little bit more available to listen and to learn. And that really improves, you know, what are the decisions that we can make together, and what does that path forward look like? But it's hard sometimes to advocate for your wellness without really getting someone to click on like, no, here's what the big picture looks like.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I love that you talked about feeling it. You know, when I do training and stuff, I call it emotional based training because I want people to feel the highs and the lows, because that's the world we live in. You know, everything's not always up here, and there's going to be moments like this. And I think that people are willing to be more committed to help when they feel the difference. Mm-hmm. You know, when they see their friend or family member struggling, going, gosh, that's not how Crystal used to handle things. She must really be overwhelmed. When they can see it in your eyes and feel it in your storytelling and things, they know something's off and they want to be there to support you. I had a time in my life where I wouldn't do anything extra with my friends. I couldn't. There was no time, and they wouldn't give up on reaching out to me. And one day they called, and finally I said I would come and meet the girls for coffee. And I wasn't doing it because I was going for coffee. I was going to get them off my back, to get them to stop asking me for coffee because rejecting them made me feel guilty. And I didn't like that, and I didn't need that. So I told them I would stop in for 10 minutes, like I'm the queen, roll out the red carpet. I'm going to honor you for 10 minutes. I mean, I was really cocky because I was just exhausted. And it was like, they don't get it. I ended up staying for 2 hours, and I did not know until I met with my friends how empty my soul was and how alone I felt. And I went for coffee every week after that because I knew that I could care better. I could feel better. I could make my mom and dad feel better. I mean, everything was better when I felt full, when I felt like someone cared about me, and that I had this energy exchange where I could talk honestly. We could laugh. We could cry together. It was so powerful. And I think, I'm not a dumb person. How did I miss this? How did I not understand the value of having that connection with people that understand and have empathy and really want to be part of my team? How did I push that away? I still struggle with that. And I think it was because, we are kind of taught, especially here in America, we're supposed to do it on our own. The whole community sense has in a lot of ways been crushed, and I think it's coming back. But you don't want to look like a fool. Well, I should be able to handle it. Everyone's telling me I should be able to handle it. So and so's done it. Well, but they don't have this, that, and the other thing on their plate, or their situation is different, and we're not processing all of those what ifs, in that. So thank you again for explaining the whole empathy piece, because I think people, like I said, struggle with that. And I think you did a really nice job explaining what it means and how it feels and how powerful, it can be with that. Now, with Innerhive, is it just for like the doctors and family, or will you meet people that you didn't meet on there before? Are there community groups of others? How can you explain a little bit more about the inner workings of Innerhive?
I sure can. It is not just for doctors or for, when people think of medical first, it's very much all aspects of wellness. And so we're working on community features right now, which very much will put you in touch with support groups. It will help you understand, who are others that are walking this journey. We're going to be rolling out the opportunity for tips. So as you had mentioned, resources and knowing what worked for other people, so that you can kind of consume that and understand, maybe I should try this, or maybe this is a valuable or helpful path to consider. And so it very much is intended to bring you into the fold, to find others that are in the journey with you, and to create a larger community that you can connect with. We want people to talk. We want them to share. We want them to collaborate. We want them to coordinate, and in all aspects of them as the caregiver, and finding their tribe and their inner hive. But also, those that are in the care recipient end of things, we want them to feel it's important for them to be connected to community. And that's something that you can see. And maybe in a little bit, I can pull up a quick view of what that looks like in our app. And but when you're there, it is absolutely something. When you start to look at, hey, what's going on in my community? Okay, what's going on in my life planning, or with, maybe my wellness or wishes? What does that look like in the finance and legal side? So the more logistical, like you said, if something happens to me today, what is the plan? What have I documented? What do people understand? And then, of course, what's going on in the medical. And so we really wanted to bring it all together to show the whole picture, and to help people understand that your quality of life is so much more. We want it to be the family's voice. It's the family's lens. You're sharing with those that you feel you trust, with those that you want to bring into your fold, that you want to be part of your inner hive. And you can choose what you share with them. There's optionality to share everything, or you can choose if maybe you want to hold some things closer and keep it private. So there's a lot of flexibility, but community is certainly something that we're building on.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. With, one of the things people are concerned about is security when it comes to the internet and stuff. So how does that work? If you're uploading documents and things like that, how do people know that that'll be secure?
Yep, we use AWS, so Amazon Cloud Services right now. So when you think about data, we've got a lot of internal process and policy in place in terms of who has access. It's limited. Everyone goes through training. We treat the data. It's the information and data is very sensitive. So we hold a lot of regard that people are extending trust to us. And so we're making sure that everything that we do on our end, whether it's encrypted, it's de-identified, it's got password protection, it's minimal access, it's gone through the training. We have prioritized safety, and we have prioritized ensuring that we are extending that same trust back to those that are granting it to us with managing this. Now, certainly I will say there's so many different variables in life. And so this is a place to kind of bring it in, to organize it. We want it to be a collaboration place. But this isn't something that, we've had people ask us, well, what if I have a password keeper? Should I copy and paste all that information in, or should I maybe, link that up? And we've advised them, we want you to have that information in here. We want this to be treated as, hey, here's kind of my wishes, my preferences, instructions, but it's natural to then send people out to those source files versus trying to pull all into one. So there's certainly boundary points of what's appropriate and what's a safe information and whatnot to bring in.
Well, yeah, and you don't know if you share it with somebody else if they're going to have the same high level security you have, for things or not. So, that's everybody looks at that a little bit different. As far as, your groups and stuff, are you looking at teaming up with, different organizations and different support groups, or are you looking at developing all your own content and resources within?
No, we know there are best practices out there. There are organizations and others. We want to support them just as much as we'd like their support. So we're absolutely looking at partners, or looking at others that we can collaborate and work with that already have this information and already have an audience that's trusting them, or, they've got the credibility because this is where they're an expert. We absolutely don't want to build all that ground up. We want to work with others, and we want to just focus on best practice. We don't want to get into advising. This is just meant to be a platform that's kind of an ally for the caregiver.
Okay. So when you say, okay, you don't want to advise, as far as support groups, because those are pretty informal, I look at even some of like the Facebook groups and things like that. Would those be pulled in, or are you looking at, pulling stuff in from other organizations where they have their own monitoring system? Because I think there's pros and cons to both of those.
It's all open right now. So I think your question is actually a phenomenal question for the audience, because what we're doing right now is we're doing focus groups with a lot of caregivers and a lot of those that are in their support network to best understand where are people going for support? What is the most valuable support group? Is it local? Is it nationwide? Is it, maybe intimate and it's just within their family and friends? And maybe it's not this, like you've said, strangers that eventually become friends. So we're still navigating and understanding what that looks like. So I think that's definitely open for opportunity and iteration.
Yeah. Well, and I think, so many people, I mean, I know if you asked me years ago, I wouldn't even know where to tell you because no one told me. So then it's like, no, I'm looking for this stuff, or my view was very skewed because of what I knew. The internet has opened that up a lot. And I think the other thing too is when you pull people together, you're going to have different types of personalities that are looking for different types of things. So I still am, I shouldn't say amazed, because I am amazed at how effective the Facebook groups are. Though I always saw their effectiveness from the get-go, which typically is bringing strangers together when they just go in and put a disease in and they'll find a group of people. But I was shocked at how much large organizations really poo-pooed those groups. And I think that still happens because I think there's still this fear based over funding. I don't want to lose my people to something that's a volunteer type thing, because a lot of them are informal. And some of their groups have been they've pulled their groups in and have a social media presence and stuff. But I think there's just you're going to find so many different types of people looking for different things. Some are going to want a space where they can really, talk openly and honestly, and not necessarily be shut down by a moderator. Others are going to want an open conversation, but want limits on what is said within a group. Because I have seen the other side too, where people really loved being in a group and then they made a comment and got kicked out of the group. And I actually had a couple of people reach out to me that were suicidal. They're like, I don't know what to do. These are my peeps and I can't talk to them anymore. I've been kicked out. And my core group on there is telling me they agree with my comments, but an admin decided I was going against something the originator of the group now thinks. And so it gets tricky out there. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't think you'll ever be able to find the perfect answer. And I think individuals need to kind of take back control of what is it that they want and know that they have choice to belong or not to belong to a group. And nothing's going to be the perfect answer. Especially with groups like that, you're going to have, or organizations, visions can change, employees can change the way things are done. Support groups definitely change depending on who's there, and what the needs are of the group, and understanding, this caring journey you're on is fluid. But you have choice, and there's many, many options out there, and there's not a right or a wrong one. It's just finding what matches your style. That's my belief anyways.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. I think people are depending upon where they're at in the journey too, it shifts for what the person needs. And, maybe one group will resonate with someone, but maybe not with someone else. It just depends on how they connect and how they share. And we want optionality. We want to meet them where they're at. And we want to give them the option to, choose and have a choice of where they go, who they connect with, or who they pull into their fold. I mean, even just starting by sharing, as a caregiver, if I were to check in and I were to talk about how I'm feeling today or make notes about that, there's an opportunity to pull community into that, to let them know, to expose them, to say, hey, you can kind of see the trend of these are the days that are harder for me and these are the days that are brighter. And so when you're pulling your community and they can build awareness of when they need to be there and show up and support you. And yeah, it really hit home earlier when you were talking about you and your friends and finding that support, because during my time of caregiving, I think where I struggled is I absolutely, when I'm in stress mode, I get very focused and I block out all the noise. And oftentimes that includes myself, my social group, my eating, my workout, all the things that maybe before seemed like they were important, but in the moment they feel as though they're nothing. Mm-hmm. And so it was interesting during that journey. I went through kind of a wave with some of my friends because the energy and the space that I was in was really hard. Mm-hmm. It was a new emotion that I was struggling to process. I wasn't very available. I was used to kind of being the rock and always being there and showing up. And when that changed, instead of some of my friends recognizing that pattern and saying, oh, this is atypical and something's going on and maybe I need to show up differently or give space or whatever that looks like, they instead were frustrated and they couldn't understand where I was coming from and they couldn't feel, they didn't have the empathy. And as a result, some of those relationships shifted. But on the upside, I had a couple of friends, one in particular who she was going through her journey of going back to school. She had been in education for a while, loves working with families and children, but had a medical incident in her own family that kind of, left her compelled to go back to school for medicine. And so she was going through her nursing journey, and to talk with her and to have her support. And she knew, and she would check in, and just sometimes it would be being on the phone and just being there. You're not even talking, but knowing there's someone on the other side that's willing to listen, or to kind of extend a virtual hug, or to send a little text when she knows she hasn't heard from me. Like, I know you're going through a lot. I'm here. We don't need to talk. But like you said, sometimes it's just the simple comfort.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, with those groups, people get to know the whole person. So they hear the good, the bad, and the ugly outside just the disease. And they really get to know one another. I have many people that go for walks or they go out for dinner. Sometimes it's just the care partners. Sometimes it's them and their loved ones they're caring for. It changes. It just, and those connections were ages ago, this was back in probably 2010, I really saw a big pushback, and people would say, those aren't real relationships. And I'm like, you know what? They're stronger relationships than a lot of them that you've been in, because they're actually talking about real life stuff, not sports, not weather, not these little fluffy things that really don't matter. You're really getting to the core of the individuals. And those relationships I've seen with so many people have been so long lasting and have been life changing for many out there. Yeah. So did you want to try sharing your screen and showing us around Innerhive a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
I gather this isn't a home page. This is someone's individual page.
That's correct. Yep. So what happens is, after signing up, you typically go through a short process. It takes 10 minutes. We ask a series of questions. It's kind of like an intake survey, questionnaire form. It's really us learning about you, what's happening. And when I say you, I specifically mean the care recipient. So in some cases, it could be the care recipient filling this out. In most cases, it's someone that's walking the journey with them. So their caregiver, family member, care manager, whatever that might look like. But so once you get through that, it automates this map. So you've answered a series of questions, provided us some insight, and this is the outcome. So it helps us understand, what does your community look like? So what are some of the groups that you're actively involved in? Maybe you have hobbies that you want to capture here. Maybe there's a spiritual connection. Maybe it's just something specifically related to your condition. And just as you had said, new friends in this very real environment of something that you share together. But the goal over here is, we want people to kind of have the option to interpret their community as they wish, and to capture all of the important aspects here. Then when you think about the medical, you've got your primary. Way back when it used to be one doctor, it's certainly shifted these days, so that's why you see a specialist. So a lot of conditions, or as we age, or chronic illnesses, medical complexities, they often have people that are very specifically, dedicated to that particular realm. And so we wanted to capture both of these. And then you've got kind of the life planning side. And so this really captures what's going on with, your insurance, your financial, your legal matters. A lot of this over here is understanding it. It functions as a good reference point for people that need to know where to go to get information right now, but it also functions as a nice reference for the future. So as you're onboarding and aligning your family, you can kind of capture what your wishes are. You can capture where you've got all that critical information, what that looks like in terms of, health directives, so on and so forth. So that's where this sits. But at the very center, we have Arthur. So it's very important to us to think about the care recipient as an individual, and to recognize that that individual often has a community or a household or a family that sits around them. And so we just want to know a little bit more about what that looks like. For Arthur in particular, this is where you can go in. And so, as you had mentioned earlier, maybe you want to capture progress. Possibly it's physical therapy, possibly it's you're going through yoga certification, and you want to know, what does that journey look like? Or in some cases, maybe it's you've got, a skin reaction, and you want to capture that with images. This is where you can put all that in addition to any sort of critical information, such as medications or contextual stuff that you want people to be aware of. You can also see any sort of appointments. So the goal here was, as we had talked about, it's real when you're trying to juggle the people and the places and the information and the appointments. Just being able to see it all in one spot, and then to understand, what does my schedule look like for the next few days or next few weeks. Then you can hook this up to your calendar. And so if you're sharing caregiving duties with others, it makes it easier to know, hey, who's taking dad to this appointment? Or, hey, who's joining dad in water aerobics? It's just a much easier way to kind of manage your time. And then you've got, again, more critical information, such as diagnoses, allergens, things that are just really relevant to understand about the individual, so that in whatever scenario or situation you may encounter them in, you've got a baseline understanding. And so then, of course, as you go in, the household and the family members, we want all the contact information there for ease. If you want to add a note, you can put any sort of note in here. We've had some family members that really love to capture body language or certain phrases, because as they go through life, we all change. And so it's been fun to kind of remember the moments that brought them joy, or the moments that shifted in, maybe when they frown, it means this now, whereas before it might have meant they were unhappy, but now it's, a slice of sarcasm. So you can put whatever you want in here for the notes. The goal is, if you want it to be open and available to anyone, you have that option, or you can also choose for it to be private. This is where we talked about adding an attachment, adding a picture, a document, a file, a voice clip. All of that can be put in here so it can accompany the note.
Can that do a video too, or just voice?
Yeah, they can do a video.
Okay.
Video, pictures, files, docs, you name it. And the beauty is we have right now Innerhive Plus, so we recognize we got a lot of feedback that people are really looking for richer features that offer them more optionality, where it has unlimited file storage, or where, maybe instead of just sharing with someone as a reference who's just able to view this, they want to add people that are co-owners. They have a trusted network and support group. They want to be able to share the caregiving. And so bringing someone else in as a co-owner lets you both collaborate and coordinate in here, see what's going on, with your dad or with whomever it is that you're caring for and yourself. And so Innerhive Plus allows that as well. And then you've got things that are integrated, such as your calendar and, being able to hook up and understand what's coming down the pipe for, time commitments. So there's a lot of rich features we're continuing to build out in that. That's our current offering right now. And as you had mentioned, earlier, the community, where are people going to be able to, connect, meet? What does that look like? This is where our focus is right now. And so we're doing a lot of learning. We're playing around with some concepts, and this is something that we're excited about in the next quarter of rolling out.
Question for you. Do you have a place at all, and maybe it's here or could be placed in here, but for routines? And I'm just thinking of even progression. So this was our normal routine for a day. This is their sleeping patterns. Maybe they have to get up during the night, or you have to change catheter, or, whatever it might be. Is there a place that I'm thinking not only the routines, but their reaction to those different parts of the day? So if someone's stepping into care during a certain time of a day, they would have a good reflection of what that could look like, or tips to, get somebody out of a cranky mood, type deal, those types of things.
Yep. So what we've offered right now is the flexibility. So if people do want to put in some degree of a routine, they can put it in here in notes. You can access it this way. We don't have anything that's specifically structured for routines. We do have something that will be coming out that will absolutely be structured about what are tips of the day. Those are going to be a little bit more generalized, but eventually what we want to do is be able to customize them. So once we understand what the caregiver needs, what the care recipient needs, we can understand a little bit more about, okay, here's what would be meaningful, or here's what could set you up for success when you are going and you're engaging in this group, or maybe you're eating this food and there's a preference of what they do or don't like, or how they prefer to eat. So those are all absolutely things that we want to capture. Just in their current form, we've given people the optionality to choose to input and organize as they wish.
Okay. Because I was thinking too, another one would be for the group, if there were resources somebody found that they would like to share with the group, to be able to list those out. And, it could be hygiene, feeding, activities, whatever, emotional support, all kinds of different things, communication tips broken down in that way. Because I saw with my own family, those pieces tended to get lost. I would send them out, but then if someone didn't find them, then it would come back to me. Oh, I was going to look that up, but I can't find it. Now I have to dig for it. And then it was like, hey, I barely had time to send it to you the first time. I got to do it again type deal.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. There's a lot of opportunity in here. So I love the richness of, as things come to mind of what you need or what others need, we're always here. I'm always open. I want to learn. We want to make sure we get the problem right. And so as these things pop up, let them flow. And anyone that's listening, do not be shy about reaching out. We want to understand what people's problems are and how this can help them in their journey. What Wonderful. You did just talk about, though, was kind of when you talked about references and resources, and earlier you had made a parallel to, sometimes it feels really good to have a checklist and cross something off and you're like, whew, I got a little satisfaction from that. So what we did do is we put together kind of an overview of, what does this finance and legal hive look like? So what does it mean to get started? It kind of gives you an overview of what it is. what steps do you need to go through in terms of building out your hive? What does it look like if you're ready to maybe move on and think about estate planning? And so as you're going through, maybe if you don't understand something and you just need a reference or a resource, this is where you can look and you can say, okay, that's what it is. Okay, great. And then you can come back to it. So this is really meant to be the roadmap and the guidance of there's a lot going on in life. I'm trying to understand what I need for myself today, what my care recipient needs today, but I also want to make sure that I'm being very thoughtful about planning for the future. And this is absolutely where we kind of created that guidance to go through and see what is it that I need to do, what's the education that I need or the best practices, and then how am I doing on my journey. It kind of gives you the ability to check it off and see the progress made. So this is something right now that we're looking at. It's a guided approach to the finance and legal realm. We're looking at doing something very similar to some of the other hives, such as community. So it helps people walk through. It makes it more bite-sized. It's not as overwhelming when you can see, okay, this is where I spend my time today. Here's what I need to learn about it. Here's an example of what that looks like. Great. I'll come back as I make progress. I can kind of see the momentum building.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Because it's just like you hate always going out to Google and you never know where you're going to land to just kind of get some basics and feel like you're in a safe spot to be able to do that. And I do like the check off part too.
Satisfaction. We all need it somewhere. There's a lot that builds, and sometimes it's nice to see, okay, what's everything I have on my plate? Okay, what have I done? What do I have remaining? And it's a great reference tool too, as you're planning for families. I can say for me, and I think maybe it's my bias, but I think anyone that's been a caregiver and has been through that experience, when we talked about understanding and the emotion and sitting with that and building empathy, I don't think you need to convince a caregiver to think about what are all the aspects of wellness in your life that matter and how are you planning for your future? Specifically, what does quality of life look like for you? What are your care preferences? As a caregiver, that's very easy. And so, providing this and them walking through, they can also start to think about themselves and what that means.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking of, and I can't remember who told me this on an interview, but it might be something to consider adding here is wish lists or comfort lists for both the caregiver and the care recipient. Because a lot of times people want to do something, but they don't know what to do. And if you had a list of this is the music I like, or I like to go for walks or a spa day, or, your beautician, nail person, it could be all kinds of different things for both men and women. To be able to list if somebody wanted to do something for you, how could they? Or maybe it's, again, getting more into that, helping out, come over for 2 hours and let me go for a walk around the lake,
yes.
Or take a nap type thing. All of those types of things. Because that's something that people don't talk about much either, or, favorite foods, grocery lists, and stuff like that. It just those simple things can make a big difference. Or favorite restaurants. I was talking with I think it was Suzanne Newman that said she would just pick somebody's favorite restaurant, and then she would order food and then just have it delivered to the house, and so it was something that she knew that they really liked. They didn't have to work. She would just call and say, don't make dinner tonight, I got it covered. And then she didn't even have to leave, it was just delivered and set up, and they loved it.
Yeah, that's really thoughtful. Yeah, we're building out. So you've made some really great points about the care recipient page and building out a more in-depth care plan, which we're working on. Love the wishes and trying to capture what that looks like. We're also building out a caregiver page, which absolutely hits on, when you talk about respite, like who can I call to help deliver food? Who can I call to come so I can, go breathe for a minute or scream in a field or take a nap? It's very much to think about, like, what is the community that surrounds that caregiver and the resources they need? And so I love the idea of being able to have this context, and then to be able to have your community know, like, oh, here's slices that I, where I can step in, and these are slices of value to them that would be something that I can contribute. That feels, I really love that.
Good. Well, this is exciting. You can't have everything and you never will have everything, because to me, if you're really meeting the need, it's going to be fluid and it's going to change and things. But I love that you're open to listening. A lot of companies aren't, and this is what I have and this is all it's ever going to be. And we've done all the studies in the world and we don't need your input. Well, to me, that just ixnays the whole concept of building a community. You've just crushed it in one swoop, and so I think it's really important to have that open ear and figure out what's going to fit and what's not. Not everything's going to work, for what you have, and that's okay too. But for the people that participate to know that they're being heard, someone's actually listening, is very valuable. And, you might say, well, it wouldn't work here, but we have this, and this is how it works. And then they're like, oh, that still meets my need. It just might not be the same words or the same layout that they thought, because you're hearing from a lot of different people, with that. So, this is exciting, Crystal. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Is there anything that we haven't covered? I should probably ask about cost. Some people might want to know, what does this run to participate in this?
Yeah. So the base level of just being able to go in, do the questionnaire, view this map, it's free. So it's accessible to anyone. You can download us on the Google Play Store. You can download us on the App Store. We want this to be something that all caregivers have access to. Now, if you want some of the richer features, like we've talked about, unlimited documents in terms of uploading, if you want to be able to bring others into your Innerhive and kind of share the caregiving, bringing in co-owners, these are things if you want to hook up to your calendar and maybe push that out and manage if there's a lot of complexity on the appointment front. Those are things that would be part of our Innerhive Plus. And so right now it's in beta pricing and it's $5 a month. So this is something, again, you'll see as an option on either store. You can also learn a little bit more on our website at innerhive.com. I'm always here if people just want to chat, if they want to share their story, if they have questions, if they have feedback. I'm here for it all. I mean, this was born because of the experiences that, I went through, those on my team went through, the pain we sat on, the emotion. I had never even dreamed of going into this realm until I felt this. And when I knew what I was experiencing and I knew all of the other people out there were going through this, it just, sometimes you feel compelled. Some might call me crazy. Some might call me passionate, whatever you want to label it. It is a little bit of an obsession in the sense that this is a problem and it's a crisis and I want to do something about it and I want to be part of it. And so ending caregiver burnout and providing caregivers with the tools and resources and community so that they can maintain their health while still caring for others. We need that. I need that for my future. We all need to change the system. We need to start somewhere. And like you said, it's not going to be perfect. It's not always going to be for everyone. It won't always have everything. But starting somewhere, I think, is just really critical in creating momentum forward.
Yeah, and I can appreciate your passion and your craziness, how people frame it, because that's how I landed here too. I had no intention of stepping into this space, and it was like, something's got to change. Somebody's got to step in, because this really is dysfunctional on a lot of different levels. So there's pain and pleasure in terms of doing that for sure, but it's definitely worth it, and people appreciate it. Well, we have been talking with Crystal Gallo of Innerhive, which is an app, and gosh, what a cool tool for people to be able to tap into. I always ask my listeners to be a giver of hope, like, click, and share. You don't know who in your own sphere needs this information, and they might not need it tomorrow. They might not need it today. They might not need it for themselves, but they will need it for someone in the future. That's just the world that we live in. And there's nothing more comforting than being able to tell somebody, oh, I just heard something about that, and being able to pass along a resource when they're pulling their hair out or they're just ready to conk out because they're so exhausted, being on this journey. So the more we can work as a team and as a community, the better off we all are. And again, it takes little time, costs you no money to share this information. Again, you can go to the website, which is innerhive.com. They are on Instagram at Hello Innerhive. They're on Facebook under the same Hello Innerhive, on LinkedIn under the company name Innerhive, and you can always email them as well at hello@innerhive.com. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and close, Crystal, unless there was anything last minute that you thought of.
No, this was awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, for having the opportunity to kind of chat about my story, your story, and the collision of how that brought Innerhive to life. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate all you're doing. Thank you. To our audience, again, pass it on. And don't forget to check out alzheimersspeaks.com for all of our free educational resources as well. We'll see you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, this is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.